Hola, welcome back to another video. It is our last week here in Mexico, and I feel like after 2.5 months we've learned a lot about this place, specifically here in Tulum. And you guys asked us about Mexico, if it's safe and how life is, and certain questions that if you're curious to travel here you might want to know the answers to. So if you're into it, stick around and let's get into what life in Mexico is like. We left Red Pepper back in the US, and Justin's been using a really great website called neighbor.com. We dig into that, where we're going to be leaving the bus, which is generally close to an airport that does a lot of international flights like Denver, or in this case it was the Las Vegas airport. And we set Red Pepper up through neighbor.com. It's about $50 a month through the guy that we found, and it's mostly just space in people's backyards where you can store a storage unit, a shipping container, or in many cases an RV or camper vehicle. So if you guys have a rig you need to leave behind while you're about to travel international or to a different part of town, then you can check out neighbor.com. So getting into Mexico was super easy. We didn't need to get any type of visa other than the visa that they assign to you whenever you first arrive at the airport. I guess they're kind of inconsistent with the number of days that they offer visas for. In general, the max stay is for 6 months, so 180 days. But I have seen and heard through the community whilst being here that various control visa stamping people, they like kind of choose whatever they want. If you have a one-way ticket, then obviously your time here can be up to 6 months, and so I think that's why we got 180 days. But for some people, if you tell them that you have a return flight, they'll mark your visa for only the days that you'll be here in Mexico. But if you're wanting to extend your stay and you decide to switch it up, you have to jump on a bus or get a transportation to Playa del Carmen and go to place where they extend visas. We've used Babbel a lot, and in one of our previous videos we have a Babbel link. If you guys are curious, you can check it out. So that's a really great option to kind of broaden your knowledge and expand your vocabulary and just be more confident whenever you're talking with people here in Mexico. As far as the type of Spanish that they speak, I guess Mexican Spanish, but there's people from Argentina, Colombia, Spain, so there's like a really big mix of Spanish accents and probably like language and grammar and the way that each country kind of uses their Spanish. Also, another platform that you can use is Duolingo. That's fun for Azalea to feel like she can contribute and be engaged with, so it's cool for the whole family. A lot of people here in Tulum are digital nomads. They work a lot with tech, like programming and other platforms, things from Silicon Valley. There's been a lot of charitable people working for nonprofits that I've met. There have been people that create websites, that create businesses when they move here, who have obtained like residencies and visas to be able to stay here super long term. For example, the co-working group, so you can create businesses when you're here. A lot of people who are expats and live here long term look into real estate. That's really hot right now, so there's a lot of people who've been certified to become real estate agents and sell properties while they're here, and it seems to be relatively easy to do that. A lot of people do advertising. There have been a few YouTubers that we have seen come through here, musicians, a lot of DJs who travel. There's so many different options for people who do work. I've met so many people from all walks of life who come here and set up, and they find a way to integrate and make their career work for them while they're living here. But I'm sure that with a little digging and questioning on the Tulum Facebook group that you could probably find some really great resources. In general, we've looked up on Facebook to find various apartments. We found that Airbnb ended up just being too expensive with all the extra fees and cleaning costs and whatnot. But if you're coming for like a week, 2-week stay, it might be really beneficial to check out what's available on Airbnb. The prices fluctuate depending on what time of year you're here in Tulum. There's a really intense high season markup, and apartments can average from like $3,000 to $4,000 for 2 bedrooms. So we were really lucky to be able to find this 2-bedroom apartment for about $1,800. The first apartment that we found was a 1-bedroom with a little kitchen, and it was a 1.5 bath, and that one was about $900 a month. That one we found on Facebook, but we ended up doing the transaction through Airbnb for a short amount of days and then paid the rest in cash, just so that she could have some momentum with her Airbnb platform and rental that she lists on Airbnb. So it was cool to be able to pay in cash and avoid some of those like service fees. The apartment that we're currently in and the one before, that was a complete disaster, and we'll tell you that because we were completely scammed. So this apartment we found on the Facebook marketplace as well. So this one we found online there for, like I said, $1,800, and it's a suite 2-bedroom, and it's been really great for us. It's a part of a hotel, which is generally how they are here. Apartments that are within like a complex where you have access to like a swimming pool, there's likely a restaurant that you could go to, generally someone out front who's some sort of a security guard. So that's nice to have. Let's talk about the scam. The last apartment that we found, here's how it went down. We found it, it was cheap, $1,800 for Tulum at that time of year, December through January and into February, which is the high season for Christmas and New Year time period. So we found this apartment for cheap. We went there, it smelled kind of sour, a little bit moldy. We weren't in love with it, but we really were in a bind. We couldn't find anything that was gonna work, and that was the best option that we could find. The person who owned that apartment, we don't know if he's from the US, but he was not here in Tulum. He was out of the country, and he had someone managing the property. The manager hadn't yet rented the unit that we were renting. It was the first time, and he claimed that there was a lot of discrepancy between the two owners, the husband and wife, that were getting a divorce. I don't know if it is true that they were getting a divorce. Nonetheless, apparently that was the case, and so there was a lot of miscommunication and slow communication, requesting for money ahead of time and all that. So we had put down the deposit, we went to the apartment, we got the keys, and we were living there for about a week and a half. Turns out that after we had paid the deposit and also the first 2 months of rent, the owner of the property was saying that the money was never received from the property manager. We never had communication with the property owner until just recently, and I will get there. Basically, there was an issue with the money that we were giving to the property manager. He was saying that we had to get out of the apartment by a certain time because the owners were trying to charge us more, and they were having a disagreement on what to charge. So he was making it seem like they were having discrepancies with the price, that they were going to be kicking us out by the end of the month if we weren't going to pay the higher amount. Turns out that actually what was really happening was the guy who was the property manager, Pato, he never gave the property owner the money. And so we were like, we're not paying more, we're moving out. We found this place, got out. Then we were trying to get our money back from Pato. The property owners are back in Tulum. And turns out the story is when Justin went back to the apartment that actually the property owners were not the people that were trying to like get more money from us. It was Pato who was screwing everybody. So they had come here, the owners, and basically were trying to maybe file a lawsuit. They were asking us to help sue him. They were asking us to, you know, put our word in to say that also Pato had taken our money. So basically we never got our security deposit back, and we never got our first 2 months rent money back. Pato kept all the cash and didn't give any of it to the owners. So we lost out about $2,000. So that's our story of being scammed here in Mexico. Nonetheless, we found this better apartment, and I think it's definitely worth digging into, knowing who you're renting from, as well as making sure that all paperwork is signed ahead of time. We paid everything in cash, and there was no receipt or anything that we would have had on us to prove that we had paid that money. So while we did get scammed, it's also partially our fault. We weren't careful, things were moving quick, and we needed to be in, and there was a lot happening in that time, and it was also pre-Christmas, so we were just busy and not paying as much attention as we should have been. We have a scooter and a bicycle that we park downstairs. Generally, most places have a bike rack that you can lock your bicycle onto, and a place to park your scooter, as well as if you have a car or a rental, you can totally park those downstairs. Each property is different. Obviously, when we were in Centro, we would bring our bike inside the apartment since someone almost tried to steal it from me. There would have been no place to park a car other than just on the street, which is also where we were leaving the scooter, which we also locked at night just because it's Centro. So just depending on which like area of town you're staying in, there's generally a place for you to park your vehicle. You'll just have to be more mindful about locking it up or bringing it inside. Water, electric, and intranet. A lot of places have that as an extra cost. It's pretty cheap. Wi-Fi. This is one that I can get into as a whole question, but in general, most places have Wi-Fi. So far, they've been included within the cost. The only thing is that it's not always great Wi-Fi. We've found that the Wi-Fi throughout the entire Tulum has been kind of on and off. It cuts out sometimes, it's pretty slow, it's not ideal, especially if you do something like what we do, which is all video and uploading and downloading. And nonetheless, they have Wi-Fi, and a lot of the coffee shops and whatnot around town also have Wi-Fi, so you can access it there, but it's generally included and a part of every apartment stay. Yes, they take both. I would say that money in cash format is better to have always on hand. Most places take plastic, but there's an extra service fee which generally ranges from like 5 to 7% of the total cost that you're paying. Some places have minimum order quantity in order to use the card. So yeah, having cash on you is always handy. A lot of the street vendors only take cash, so there's plenty of ATMs around town that you can get your money out from. And it took us a minute to figure out that you had to actually put your card in like not vertical but horizontal. So that was a weird thing that we discovered, as well as some ATMs will actually eat your card and never give it back. We saw it happen to a few people like ahead of us. The ATMs can run out of money because there's just such a high amount of people here. The other thing is just be mindful about the time of day that you go. I would say that evenings, especially on weekends, can be super crowded, and you can be queuing for your money for like 30 minutes. You could be waiting to go and get money in at an ATM. So I would say go like Monday morning or any time in general in the morning. There's a lot of different banks around here. Always decline the conversion rate. You can get a better rate through your bank at home and not the one that you're getting the money from here in Mexico. Also, every time that you do take money out, depending on the bank that you choose, you do get charged a service fee which can range from like $2.50 to like $6. But the one that we've been going to as our regular go-to is the Santander. They seem to have the best rate and the most consistent amount of money supply, and we haven't really ever had any issues with our cards disappearing from that bank. We have never really been big on travel credit cards. I still do have the Capital One Venture, but we found that the return of investment, the value that they give, is not really worth it when you have mileage that you can claim and buy flights with. They limit you to only buying flights through their website, and if you were to use those points to buy flights on a different website, the rate is much less, so you get better value if you buy it through Capital One. But the flights that they offer are not always ideal. It's just a much smaller selection and generally tends to be more expensive than ones that we have found just through Google Flights. So I don't know, we don't really use travel credit cards as of anymore, I guess. But if you're interested and feel you could manage running a credit card and not get yourself majorly into debt, then it might be something worth looking into, because it does have certain benefits if that works for you in your lifestyle. We cancelled our Verizon plans at home. We had them for about the first week or so. We had the unlimited, the business one, that allowed us unlimited data back home for when we were traveling in the Red Pepper. But when we came here, obviously things changed, and we had 1 gigabyte a day and unlimited text for free back to the US. So we ported our numbers through Google Voice. That basically means that with Wi-Fi, we have access to text using our number and make phone calls. Although through a lot of complex problem solving, we realized that the only way to make and receive phone calls was through our laptop and not our cell phone. So in order to be able to have data and make phone calls and use WhatsApp, we bought SIM cards from Telcel and just did top-ups of 100 pesos for every time we ran out of data, which allowed us to use WhatsApp, which was our primary way to communicate with anything and everyone. I would say moped or bicycle, depending on where you're staying. Everything generally is no more than a 30-minute bicycle ride, so from here to the beach or from here to a cenote, and then if you're going into town where we're staying, it's about 10 to 15 minutes by bicycle. Obviously on a scooter everything is much faster and you can get further. We've been able to drive our scooter all the way to Playa del Carmen, which is about an hour away, so it works. It's not ideal, and if you are trying to go further inland or further up the peninsula or down the peninsula, I definitely recommend having a vehicle. You can rent cars for about $30 a day. We almost did that until we just we decided it wasn't really necessary for us, and It also tends to be apparently a bit more risky for getting pulled over and having police checks, and so we just decided to stick with the bicycle and the scooter. The one thing that I have known and seen other locals to do, if you are renting a car, just make sure if there are any blemishes on the vehicle that you're videoing and taking images to store on your phone, so that if you do have someone who's giving you a hard time when you're returning the car, they're not going to be like, you know, this is a new scratch. You can show them that you have the photo from when you rented the vehicle. But for us, we ended up actually buying a bicycle and a scooter, and we found both of those things through the Facebook marketplace. It's the best place to find things that are local. There's tons of scooters for sale and tons of bicycles for sale. If you're not staying long term, then it might not be beneficial to do that, because you can rent bicycles for about $7 for the day or $10 for an overnight, like 24-hour rental. And then scooters you can rent, I think, for like $20 on a daily rental. We ended up deciding to buy ours because the monthly rentals for scooters were about $300 a month. And so us staying here for 3 months and buying a scooter for about $800 and then selling it again for $700 meant that we're renting our scooter for 3 months for only $100. And the only cost for us is gas. Obviously we refill up like every few days, but it's a very affordable amount that you're putting into your tank. The bicycle I got for $2,500, came with the bike seat and also a lock, and so that was a really great option for us to have as a backup vehicle for the days that we needed to tag team, like someone keep the scoot, someone can bring Azalea in the back. We did bring her little helmet with us because kids' helmets were kind of hard to come by. So we decided to buy Spidey off of a guy who had already got it tagged. We didn't want to have to go through any of like the DMV processes here down in Mexico. You can buy scooters new for about $800 and they literally sell them at the grocery store, or I've seen them at like a couple of pharmacies, but then you would have to go through the process of tagging the scooter. If you are traveling with a kid and you don't have a seat on your bicycle, then you can buy them also for about $30 new, and there are also bicycles here that you can buy from rental companies and then sell back to them, and they sell you the used bicycles. So it's worth exploring and asking around what your different options are and what your budget is. But in general, you can buy a bicycle for about $100 or less. Let's just say if you want to. I think in general the consensus is that something happens, you pay for it out of pocket. No one is checking your insurance if you get pulled over. Generally they just want to know if you have all the paperwork to be the owner of the vehicle. So you'll have like an ownership card and a couple of other things from the previous owner, like papers that you'll need. We generally just took pictures of all that paperwork, had it on our phone, so if we got pulled over we could show it to them. Just be safe, don't get into accidents, and take care. The other thing is that it is a law to wear a helmet if you're riding on a scooter, so just make sure that you always grab one of those before you go. We haven't had any tickets or payments given to us if we weren't wearing a helmet, but we have been called out by locals and also the police to make sure that we are wearing our helmets, so remember to bring a helmet. Our scooter came with the helmet, and I would imagine that rentals also come with a helmet. I would say yes. Justin and I have past experience driving on the scoot in Bermuda and just generally feel comfortable riding on vehicles like that. It doesn't feel too difficult once you get into the rhythm. I would say it's harder to balance if you're going slower, and the faster you go it becomes a little bit easier to kind of gain momentum and balance. Vince is a total newbie and crashed the scoot.
Feeling strong?
Yeah.
I think just practice, go slow and test it before you give it a go on the big roads. Overall, Vince has been able to ride it around the block a couple of times and gain more confidence driving on the scoot. So I think it's possible to learn, especially if you're here for a long time. They also do have like quad bikes, the ATVs, so if you feel more comfortable without having to like balance, that could be another great alternative. I would say beautiful. So right now we're here at the high season. It ranges to be like 60 degrees in the night to 80 degrees in the day. Some days have been cloudy and cooler in the day, and also making it obviously cooler at night. Definitely bring a sweater. Riding on the scoot home late in the evening after a beach day, it can be chilly. Your body is just still kind of like damp. In the summer, we've heard that it can get up into 100 degrees. A lot of people have swimming pools for that reason, because the seaweed can be kind of intense at the beach, and so people swim in their swimming pools during the summer months. Briefly talking about seaweed, we all know that the seaweed has been a really big issue, and I would say it's been interesting learning about it. You can go online and see like the seaweed radar, and it'll show you like how much seaweed is on the beach. They have like these big cameras that kind of give you actual visuals so you can see how bad it is. All down the beach area where there's hotels and whatnot, they tend to rake the seaweed, but if it is in the water and floating for several days, which it has been for us a few times, where the water has just been kind of brown, you can still swim. You just have to wade past the seaweedy port. It does kind of have a weird smell. They also, I learned, have seaweed management that they do out in the deep sea. So they have boats that collect it and prevent it from coming ashore. Obviously some still comes ashore, but they don't do it as much whenever the season is not at its peak for tourism. They tend to leave the seaweed, and that's why it can be a little bit worse during the summer months instead of in the winter. There's a couple, there's two big ones, and they will be building another one on the other side of town, but both are on the northern end of town, the Super Key and the Chedrai. I would say the Chedrai is somewhat like a Walmart. It has a produce section, but also has like great appliances, TVs, headphones. There's a bank, you can buy alcohol in there. They have juices, they have clothes, they have like trinkets and gifts. They also have like toiletries, soaps, all things that generally you probably could find in the States. Their produce section, depending on when you're going, can be hit or miss. They don't always stock all the produce, and they sometimes don't have certain things in stock at all for several days. So it's kind of hard to know when the right time to go is. It's a very tight squeeze and can be super crazy. Like during the holiday season, you can buy mopeds there if you needed to, and generally they have all the things that you would probably find at a traditional supermarket. They have a great organics and like international food section, so you can find things like soy sauce or quinoas and tofu and hummus. They have a big cheese section and a lot of traditional Mexican produce and foods and things that you would find here as a local. You should not drink the water from the taps here in Mexico, and so people buy bulk water. So make sure you have a reusable water bottle, otherwise you're going to be using a lot of plastic water bottles. But they have big, I guess they're like 10-gallon jugs of water, and you can exchange them. Be sure to take extra good care of your bottle, because if it's dented or got a crack, or if you're missing the lid, they won't do an exchange and they'll make you buy a new one. If you're someone who loves to support local farmers and businesses, then there's also a ton of like farm stands where they sell things like mangoes and pineapples and other local produce that they have here. Less imported goods, so less likely to find things like broccoli. Sometimes they can have like dried goods and grains, especially rice or beans, things that are staples here in the Mexican diet. Not normally cheese, but sometimes they have some with refrigerators that have cheese from local farmers as well. So if you're buying at the grocery store, it depends really what you're buying. A lot of the more international type things like soy proteins or tofu or cheese tend to be obviously slightly more expensive, but in general you can get really great prices for various foods. Produce is pretty affordable here, and yeah, I would say in general I think that buying from the supermarket is cheaper for sure than what you can afford buying in the States. I would also say that buying food when you're out, if you're going to a restaurant, can range in price. You can buy from street vendors 2 sandwiches for 60 pesos, or you can buy from restaurants down at the beach road a meal for like 200, 380 pesos. So depending on where you're eating and what kind of food you're looking for, you can get a really big range of price points. So you just have to make sure that you're eating within your budget. I would say the Chedrai is the great place for that. They've got a ton of things like brooms and cleaners. They've got laundry detergent, soaps. You can also get cleaners to help out at your casa for a pretty affordable price. They have a ton of lavanderias all around town and they all have different prices, but generally they do it by weight. So you just bring all your gear in a big old bag. And you leave it with them overnight is generally the quickest they can do it, so that you get your clean laundry folded and bagged the next day. And it's pretty basic. They just give you a ticket and they keep it clean. And so to be honest, you don't even need to buy laundry detergent or pack any to bring with you. Most apartments that we have rented, none of them have had laundry facilities on site, so that has been our go-to and it's been really great. All around town you can find a ton of restaurants, little shops. They have clothes, trinkets. There's a ton of macrame, art and paintings and clothes and jewelry and all kinds of things. It tends to be about 11 o'clock when things are really starting to pick up and be open. Early morning stores are much slower here and things tend to stay open much later until about like 8 or 9 p.m. Restaurants are also open quite late here. Bars open until 2, I believe now, because of the COVID regulations that have just now been released. Right now, currently we're in the zone yellow, which just means that the curfew is at 2 instead of 4, and so certain things like the street vendors have to close a little bit earlier, and you do have to wear masks going inside various buildings, but in general it seems to be quite lax, especially if you're in an outdoor space. The beach parties and cenote parties that we've been to, they have shuttles that take you all the way out there and take you all the way back for free, included with your ticket. They have that shuttle running until like 8, I think 10 in the morning actually. Vince has stayed there until 1 in the afternoon, so you could be prepared and should be prepared to party through the night and into the next day. So yeah, some places are open super late. After being here for about 3 months now, we can fairly say that we've explored a lot of sides of Tulum, and yeah, there's a lot to offer and there's a lot that's good and a lot that's bad. So there's a ton of restaurants, there's a ton of bars, they've got a fun bunch of music always going down. There's the mariachi bands that walk around, there's a lot of street music makers and vendors that you can explore. You can have a lot of fun at night going on cenote raves if you're into it. You generally find parties listed on Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, and they send you the information with the different lineups of all the DJs that come from around the world to do shows here. And you can buy the tickets online. The tickets for these parties are a little expensive in my opinion. You also end up having to pay when you arrive at the party for any drink or food. For example, the cenote party, it's like 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes down the road, and there's no signal or service on the phone once you get out there, so it's hard to get in touch with taxis. Taxis were ranging $80 to $100 one way. They were also charging about $40 per person on the way out there if you are not keen to wait for a shuttle. But it's totally worth it once you're out there. It's a really amazing setting in the cenote. It's beautiful, it's music and peaceful to sit by the water, and honestly you can see so many stars. It was a really cool experience. I would do it again, but also be mindful of just being a part of something within the jungle that's causing a lot of repercussions to nature and the environment and the community of animals and whatnot that live out there. So something to be mindful of, that a lot of tourists come to this area, and so there's a lot of negative impact that we as tourists have made in this area, and that is kind of one of them. So there's other really fun events and activities and things that you can do in town here. There's a place called Palma Central. It's sort of like a food court area outside, and they do salsa music on Tuesdays. They also have a really kid-friendly space because they have a playground within the area. It's really cute. They have a lot of different food vendors and it's always a good time. You can find a lot of families there, and it's just a good way to meet people and integrate into a very local community. ICAL has some really great options for kid activities. They do cacao ceremonies there. They make music with various like organic like instruments for the kids to hang out and use, and They do art and other activities. They also have a kids group that I discovered through looking for a nanny on one of the Facebook groups. I came across a lady called Carolina, who's our go-to babysitter, and if you're ever looking for someone to watch your kids, she's a very, very kind mother of a little boy, and she lives here in Tulum, and she's been really, really amazing, and Azalea really has enjoyed spending time with her. But she also hosts a little kids group in one of the hotels, changes rooms every time whenever they go, depending on which rooms are available, but local kids and families can come and stay. It's about a 2-hour session for a pretty good price, and they get to do crafty things that are like seasonal and like holiday related, depending on what time of year it is. But it's really cool. They're very nature orientated and keen on getting the kids outside and being creative and working with their hands. Tulum is really known for like spirituality aspect, and while I don't necessarily align with the type of spirituality that is projected here, although it may seem that way, it has a very much a facade to it. I have really enjoyed doing yoga at Holistica. It's a very beautiful, serene jungle hotel where they also have 3 yoga shalas that have a beautiful space inside. It's very peaceful to do yoga there. You feel like you're leaving the city and entering into this like jungle bubble, and they have a food cafe there, so you can stop after your yoga and get a juice or a tea or a coffee or food, whatever you want. It's a great place to go set up in the jungle and just really release in your body and meditate and do yoga. And the classes that I've been taking, apart from one, have been really, really great. There's scuba diving, there's snorkeling, there's exploring the like coast where there's sea turtles and stingrays and all kinds of animals that live out there. There are plenty of activities. A lot of them you do have to pay for. For Azalea's birthday, we went up the road about 20-30 minutes to this place called Cellphones, and it's basically like a supersized water park. They had a kids climbing gym, they had a tubing through mangroves, they had zip lining, they had a huge water slide, they had swimming with dolphins and manatees. They had parrots everywhere. It was a very cool experience. You paid about $100 to get in. You could stay as long as you wanted, and food and drink was all included, and it was all you could eat. So there's that. And then the other thing that you could totally pay to do is to take a boat with a guide from the beach and go out and see turtles and stingrays right off the break. Justin has swam out to it a few times now on his own with just flippers and his snorkel goggles, but otherwise you can go out with a guided boat tour, and they'll suit you up with all the gear that you need, life jackets and flippers and goggles and everything, so that you can explore that whole area without needing to swim from the shore. So for Azalea's school, we had to go by a doctor to get a doctor's note. It just needed to be stamped to say that she's healthy, well and fit and ready for school. It was pretty easy to set that up, and it was literally like 250 pesos, maybe like $15 for a quick doctor's initial visit. Dentist that we just went to today, I hope my teeth look clean. Yeah, it was a really tiny space. They did a great job. They gave us a deal, I guess you can barter. We only had 760 pesos when actually we needed to pay 800. They were like, don't worry, you don't have to pay the last 40 pesos, which was really kind of them. But for Justin and I, that's how much we paid for cleaning for the 2 of us. And they were really quick, very efficient, and I was able to communicate through WhatsApp to schedule my appointment. And yeah, it was pretty easy. I had looked ahead of time for childcare for Azalea's school and really struggled to find something that was going to be affordable. The babysitting that we had found here, we tested out 2 different companies. Both of them were really great. They came with supplies. Generally, they stay in the apartment or complex or wherever it is that you're living. Long term though, to have her not leave the house or engage with other kids didn't really seem like the right move, as well as it was a bit more pricey. It was pretty easy to get her enrolled in the school. I started communication with one of the administrators. We were first talking through email and then also WhatsApp, and she told me everything that I would need, how long was Azalea going to be in the program for, and then I just needed to choose the campus that we were going to be attending, whether it's Playa del Carmen or Tulum, and we had to kind of know how long she was going to be enrolled when we signed her up. So initially we told her, yeah, we'll be enrolling Azalea until the end of January. They were like, that's fine, you just pay when you arrive, you come in a week early, we'll fill out all the paperwork. She just needs the doctor's certificate that says that she's healthy and well. We also had to bring her birth certificate, like a photocopy of it, and then a photocopy of mine and Justin's passport. So they had that on file for like pick up and drop off and just knowing who her parents are. They have like an insurance coverage, so like if there is any injuries that go down in school, if they need to see the doctor, you pay for the year. So we paid like very small amount for that, and then they also have just like for supplies and materials and things like that another payment. It's not necessarily a schooling system that I would have preferred, although it's known to be one of the best schools here in Tulum. You know, it is a different culture, and so they're pulling from different backgrounds and teaching in a very different way than what we're probably used to in the States. But from my experience, I think it was really good for Azalea to be integrated into a community of kids her age and also be surrounded by Spanish and other cultures. I think it was really something that she's really enjoyed since we've been here in Tulum. There are also a few other really great options for schools in this area, and not just the one that we went to. We would have loved to have sent Azalea to the Green School. That's also like a global. They have one in Bali, in South Africa, and New Zealand, I believe, and then Mexico here in Tulum. They were supposed to open last year, but due to COVID, they had to delay their opening. We just missed out on that one, but from what I've heard and read and done research on, it's a really great school that's very environmentally based, and teaching the kids to be more sustainable, mindful, just careful with their environment and how to be more in tune and integrated into living sustainably. So Tulum, as you may have heard, it has a slight dark side to its truth, and a part of that is the big influx of tourism that's now coming here. The big negative that a lot of people who've been living here for a long period of time say that the infrastructure of Tulum is just not ready for the amount of people that come here, and for so many reasons it's completely true. When it rains, the roads flood, and the hotels on the beach road, they used to be all down a dirt road until they finally paved it. There's a lot of roads that are not paved at all. There's a lot of new construction happening in parts of the jungle that they are tearing down so that they can build eco-chic structures. They're claiming to be sustainable, but the reality is that the beach road is also, all those hotels down there are running off of huge diesel generators. There's not really a septic system that's running through Tulum, and so a lot of the wastewater, like I said, with the rain and standing water, a lot of that wastewater is going just into the streets, into the cenotes, out into the ocean. During the high season, the prices get crazy high, to the point where it's like not even cheaper than living in the States. Coming here, I'd really hoped to ingrain into a very beautiful spiritual mindset, and while I've had my experience, I kind of think that it's not as real as it comes across. People come here for the scenery, the beautiful landscape, and claim to be more in tune with nature when the jungle's getting torn down. There's just like a lot of, we've called it the lips, tits, and boobs. There's a lot of that here where people, I guess, find a lack of peace with their self, with their bodies, and so they augment and change who they are as people, and dress in a very bohemian way. It's not because they're aligned with what you would normally see as the type of person who's deeply rooted and connected and grounded to nature. They're somewhat carefree and disconnected from the truth of what's really happening here in Tulum, with especially the eco sense of living here. There's just a big clash with wealth and poverty, and the people who are of wealth don't seem to acknowledge the poverty and that side of Tulum. Gentrification is definitely happening here in Tulum. There's Centro, and then there's like slum-like living, and then there's Aldea Zama, and Aldea Zama is very high class vibe. It's probably the most expensive area in all of Tulum. It's just an uncomfortable feeling, in a way awkward, being in such a beautiful home when there's people literally just down the road who are living under tops on a dirt road and don't have heat or barely any electricity. And so there's a bit of a facade of Tulum is like this, when the reality is that there's still people here that don't live comfortably. The overarching thing is, if you come here and want to still love it the way you do when you first stay for like a week or two, I would say stay for a week or two. If you want to see the truth, the real side of like how tourism can in a way impact in somewhat of a negative light, then I would say stay longer, because you can really see the truth of any place whenever you stay more than a month, I guess. I can't speak for the entirety of Mexico, but I can speak for Tulum, and I would say that Tulum's reputation is kind of going downhill because it is seen as quite a party town, and there are so many tourists coming here and spending their money on drugs and whatnot for the parties and evening affairs. I would say that I haven't necessarily felt unsafe here. I have walked at night alone, I have biked at night alone, and we have been in the nighttime scene, not in some of the busiest areas, which we have been told are probably the most unsafe places, like down in the hotel zone at night. We've been there maybe 3 times total. Most every time we were told that's probably the least safe part of Tulum. We have seen deals go down, dealings of the unspeakable. It's pretty obvious and hard to miss. There's certain vibes and places that you just can tell to not go to. Once you've been here long enough and you get to know a lot of the locals, they also tell you where not to go and where to go. I would say that the busiest and craziest time of us being here, where it was super obvious that there was a lot of drug dealings happening, was the New Year's time. So the high season, right after Christmas and into the first week of January. Yeah, generally people here have been quite friendly. Even the people that seem nervous to walk through the more slum-like part of town, which is what divides Aldea Zama, where a lot of tourists come and stay, and Centro. There's this one long dirt road that you have to take that cuts through that slummy-like area, and the housing and feeling that you might have if you've never been out the country or seen that kind of living before can be maybe nerve-wracking, but the reality is there are a lot of families that live out there. There's a lot of stray dogs, but they also seem relatively happy and not aggressive or angry. Yeah, so I don't know, I think for some people they felt unsafe maybe walking through in that one little area, but overall I have felt safe in Tulum. I've felt more unsafe in parts of Paris where I've lived before, walking at night, than I have here in Tulum. And it really just depends on your perspective of things. Obviously there's no cartels in several other countries in the world, but the cartels are not after you as a visitor, they're after each other so that they can maintain obviously good business. I think makes people nervous is when they come here they see a lot of police, and then they also see recently a lot of National Guard, and that is a bit intimidating because you see them with their big guns. There is a very big gun culture here. I don't feel afraid because those people with those guns are to protect us as tourists and travelers and locals, not, you know, make us scared. It's more to make the cartel realize that there is protection here and not to try anything, and that they're supposed to be here to help us prevent any further drama, I guess, for the drug war that is continuously happening. It's a big topic of debate whether or not it's safe or not, but I would say I don't feel unsafe. So that goes to say a lot. And you know, Savannah, Georgia, I felt more unsafe in Savannah, Georgia than I do here in Tulum. And it's really just perspective and where you're coming from and what kind of energy you put out into the world. And if you stay out of trouble, don't get into the dirty parts of town, you're not really doing anything that you shouldn't be doing, then I think you'll be fine. So I would say still you should come to Tulum and come for a visit and explore what everything here in the Yucatan has to offer, because it's definitely a place that you don't want to miss exploring and worth the trip. So don't be afraid to take a little risk and sometimes you have to go against what people say just so that you can fulfill, you know, your personal dreams and exploration. Hope this has been super helpful and hope you managed to make it out here to Tulum. Yeah, we'll see you guys next time, and we are gonna be with the red pepper. So excited. I've kind of missed red pepper. I hope you guys are ready because we are.